Welcome to Buckets Live, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name is Matt Moore. I'm a senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Sean Little. He's on Twitter and then the Action Network app at Chicago Flow. You can check him out on MSG Network. All sorts of stuff. He's been on NBA TV lately. My man's been everywhere. Very excited to have him on tonight. We got lots to talk about tonight. Tonight we will talk about the Boston Celtics once again wetting the bed in a late game situation. And whether that means anything or not versus the Atlanta Hawks, we'll talk about the Milwaukee Bucks taking a beating from the New Orleans Pelicans and whether or not the Pelicans can make some noise. We're also going to talk about the New York Knicks, who are probably at this point consensus, maybe Action Network NBA side best value in the Eastern Conference. Always a fun time when the Knicks are somehow having value. And we'll get into the Friday slate of games with a lot of games in the Western Conference with huge implications. We'll also get you best bets for the Friday slate. We'll do all that and more on today's show. Buckets is presented by North Carolina's newest sports book, BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5 for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Sean, well, let's break down a little hoops here. So the Boston Celtics led by 30 this week versus the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah.
They blow the lead. They lose outright. No Trae Young. They lose outright.
Yep.
They are in Atlanta again this evening, and somehow they lose this one too. No gigantic blown lead, but once again, the crunch time problems for Boston, where there's debates amongst Celtics fans that I follow about whether it's the offense or the defense. I think the offense still has major problems in terms of Tatum isolating, but the defense has problems too. They have issues in the clutch defense from that perspective as well. DeJounte Murray tonight shot 44 times. He had 44 points on 44 shots, 7 boards, 7 assists. That is a 2004 ass line right there from DeJounte.
Yeah.
And I for one am here for it. I think that's amazing. Bogdanovich chips in 24. Tatum goes for 31, 13, and 6. They get 22 from Derek White. Quiet night from Jaylen Brown with 18 points on 17 shots. KP has 20, but he got to a really hot start and then really cooled down. Look, they were asking in the NBA chat. The Joe Delaire hit me up and was like, "Matt, is this March basketball or Celtics?" And I'm like, look, yeah, Boston has problems in these late game situations, but overall, I'm sticking with this is March and it's fine. I'll talk about why. But what was your reaction to watching this one?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it is March and it doesn't matter overall, but we have been blessed because the whole narrative that we've been saying every week on Buckets for literally the entire season, along with everybody else, is that the only thing we're worried about with Boston is Mazzulla, Tatum, and late game offensive situations when games are tight. And they've been smashing everybody the last 2-3 weeks and all season, basically. But we've been blessed now with back-to-back road games for throw away the other team's jersey, Matt. I don't care who it's against. It could be Atlanta, it could be Utah, it could be whoever. It could be Chicago, it could be the Knicks. But we got blessed with 2 late game situations where the Boston Celtics are on the road, and it is essentially crunch time, possession by possession. How are you going to put these teams away? And the Boston Celtics in back-to-back nights off 2 full days of rest, no problem. The Atlanta Hawks, remember, were playing their 4th game in 6 days. The Celtics had 2 full days off. This is what we want to see and how they're going to react. And in multiple nights in a row, they reacted poorly. I'm in the camp of, I'm not sure why the Jaylen Brown jumper to go up 1 wasn't the last shot of the game. I'm in the camp of have the last shot, have you have the ball with the last shot,
Yes.
Either win the game or lose the game and go home. There is absolutely no reason to leave the Atlanta Hawks 6+ seconds and DeJounte Murray 6+ seconds for him to have the ability to run in the backcourt, pick up the ball, and then bring it up, and essentially have an ISO situation against Drew Holiday. I know Drew is a dog, but that's still a tall order. Now, if you leave 2-3 seconds left on that clock, then you start thinking about blitzing him and sending another guy over there. It
Yeah.
puts him in a completely different situation where if he does decide to give it up, that's going to be a catch and shoot, get up as soon as I possibly can, ill-advised heave to try to win the game, right? 6 seconds is a completely different story. So that was number one. I think overall, no matter the roster, if the biggest dog on the roster is tight when things get tight, a la Jason Tatum, the rest of the team is going to be tight. That's just what it is. And I believe that's the reason we're coming down the stretch here and things aren't as smooth and are still question marks on what they want to do because Jason Tatum is flat out not comfortable coming down the stretch when these games get tight, whether it be in Atlanta, Boston, good comp, bad comp, whatever you want to call it. I do want your opinion on this, Matt. I know overall this stuff doesn't matter, but we've been blessed to see some late game situations, as I've mentioned, before we get into the playoffs. I saw your correspondence on Twitter as well, and I've talked about this recently about the best after timeout play is going to Porzingis on the elbow and running offense out of there. I still was shocked to see Tatum, essentially a decoy, in the backcourt just standing there. Like, hey, you are not going to be involved in this offensive possession that is going to be to win the game whatsoever. Just stand here behind half court. We're going to go to Porzingis on the elbow and figure out however we want to get into action there. It ended up going to Jaylen Brown. He ends up knocking down the big shot, but that still deep down rubbed me the wrong way for situations when we get in the playoffs. So it was a really interesting finish. I was on record on buckets yesterday. I thought the Boston Celtics would just bounce back against a tired Hawks team and blow those guys out. I ended up splitting. I took the under in Bucks Pelicans as well. But give me your thoughts on the decoy Tatum, and this has to matter a little bit. Just the last 5 minutes of these last two games matters a little bit. Of course, in the grand scheme, it doesn't matter. I think if these dudes were ever to see each other in the playoffs, which is a possibility as the Hawks hang around in that 10 slot, the Boston Celtics should take care of business in 5 or less. But I also said that last year, and we saw what happened. They did end up pushing the 6. Yeah. So talk to me about the decoy situation and just overall, do you agree or disagree with me on Tatum, on the team essentially getting their late game form from Tatum being a little tight personally? Reflects on the team.
All right, first off, those of you that are hanging out in the chats, hit me up with a like on this video. Give me that like button. Second, all right, here, let's talk about the Tatum stuff. So, okay, the ideal is that you have this closer who's like DeMar DeRozan that's like always comes up clutch for you and always scores a big basket. Like that's obviously the ideal. But there's been kind of this debate of like, look, you want the ball in your best player's hands. However, I will say this. If you were constructed like the Celtics, where you were not built around one dynamic player who's heliocentric, if you are not built that way, and that's not how this Boston team is built. Like they're built around like, hey, we have a really good ass team. Like our team is the superstar. Is that we are so good 1 through 5 that we have the starting lineup that's so good, and that our combinations are better. Okay, if that's who you are, you should be flexible in end game situations. That's how you should be able to generate offense. You should be able to be like, look, this isn't the matchup, right? This is not the one that we want on him. Tatum struggles in these spots, and Tatum has been so. Now you don't want Tatum losing confidence, right? That's a concern. What you don't want is you don't want Tatum being like getting in his head about the late game stuff. But I think in certain positional situations, like you should take advantage of the matchup. And like I do think that putting Porzingis in that spot is probably the best way for them to generate offense. So I'm actually kind of in favor of this. I don't think that I've asked a lot of teams and players, like, why do you guys go to like you run great offense the rest of the game and then it comes down to the last possession and you're just like, let's ISO, let's do hero ball. Why do you do that? And their response is always, I don't know. I'm dead serious. They say like, don't know, man. Like that's just what we do in the NBA. And I'm like, okay, but like you could run a play, like you could run a set It's still
Well,
basketball.
Matt, you know the answer though, because there's an alpha in the room that says, "Hey, I want all the glory. I'm the guy. I'm the guy getting paid $50
Yes.
million. I want to
Well,
get the ball in an
okay.
ISO situation, and I want to be on SportsCenter, and I want to be the guy being talked about on Twitter." That's essentially why, because at some point there's an alpha in the room that's saying, "Hey, fuck all that running offense. Give me
Yeah.
the ball one on one versus a guy, and I'm going to put the dagger in him and win the game." That's like the overall, the
This is
overarching
this is like
thing.
what LeBron was talking about with JJ Redick on that podcast this week about they all want to run ones,
Yeah.
right? Everybody wants to run ones. Um, I get it, right? And there are guys I think that you want in that kind of a situation, like fuck it, I'm gonna go score. But but I don't necessarily know that Boston is that team. Like that's not how Boston's built. Tatum's good. Tatum's great. He really is. He's a great player. But he has really struggled in these spots. Now, I think it'll be interesting to see going forward if that's the same case in the playoffs. The other thing that I think you have to kind of remember is the other reason they do this is it lowers the chances of a turnover. You want to make sure you get a shot. Guess what the easiest way to make sure you get a shot is? ISO. Like you
Yeah.
just run ISO stuff and that's how you get it. So I think that's kind of interesting. 56% in the chat saying that they think Boston should be concerned. I think that's really interesting. Here's the argument for why they shouldn't. March basketball is fake. None of this is real. This is all AI generated basketball. None of this is real. And if you want proof, like go look at I posted this the other day. I'll post it again. The list of double digit comebacks in March alone. It is just berserk. It's not just double digit. It's like 15, 17, 19, 22, 26, 30 the other night. It's in a weird spot. The other thing is that Boston's effectively clinched the one seed. Like it's done. Like they're gonna be the one seed throughout. They've clinched the Eastern Conference. The Nuggets last year when they clinched the East, they lost to the San Antonio Spurs before Victor Wembanyama. Like it when you have nothing left to play for, it takes something off of you. You're just going through motions and reps. Um, Sean, the chat is asking if your hat is an All Star '96 hat.
It is 1990. Shout out to chat. Yeah, man. Starter 1996 NBA All Star. I just got this in the mail a couple days ago. This is an all timer. It's fucking awesome, huh?
Pretty
Fucking
good.
good find. Yeah, yeah. 1996, man. Whoever said that in the chat, man. Shoot me a DM. Let's chat. Let's talk about it. I'll show you where I got it. I'll send you the link.
Andrew Woolman.
Andrew, holler at me.
All right. In the other game, Pelicans get the job done versus the Bucks. That's a good bounce back spot for them versus the Thunder. I've got playoff picture that's up in the Action Network app. You can go download that right now and read that story. It breaks down all the scenarios. I'm going to update it after tonight's games. That's a good win for the Pelicans. They are very much in play for still the 4 seed. I think I I still kind of believe that it's going to be Clippers Pelicans 4-5. I know that everybody's kind of like, I don't know, the Clippers are really falling apart. Maybe, but they got to fall apart for 2 more weeks, and the other teams have to pass them, and I don't know if that's going to happen. But this New Orleans team, like Sean, I have a hard time because it's like I thought that game the other night versus OKC was a really good opportunity for them to get a quality win versus a team that was struggling, and OKC kind of outclassed them late. But
Yeah.
every time I start to be out on the Pels, they have one of these games where I'm like, okay, like this team is so dangerous. They bring so much to the table. And then once I start to buy in, then they'll have a game where I'm just like, they just get outclassed by a top level opponent. I kind of think that this maybe has more to do with where Milwaukee sits in the hierarchy than it does with the Pelicans. But I know you got strong thoughts. What do you think about the Pels? We're very likely to wind up in the 4-5.
Yeah, I just think they're an awesome basketball team, and I think the Thunder are awesome too. So the way they closed that game with New Orleans storming back after they were down big for the Thunder to hang tough, I thought that was very impressive. But I'm very high on the New Orleans Pelicans. I think out of everyone says it's not a team you don't want to see this team in the playoffs. And it kind of next thing you know, at some point in the year, everybody has said that about every single team in each division. I am serious when I say that about the Pelicans, and I'm also serious when I say that about the Orlando Magic. I'll give you a hot take, Matt Moore. Right now, today, as we record this live bucket, it's 11:15, Thursday, March 28th. I would rather play the Miami Heat in a 7-game series than the Orlando Magic. That's how strongly I feel about the Orlando Magic at the moment. I know they've been beaten on inferior opponents, but they have looked sensational. And I'm starting to believe my eyes here when it comes to the Miami Heat just night in, night out. I might look up and be like, yo, Sean, that was the dumbest take I've ever had. But right now, I feel very strongly about Orlando. They look extremely tough. And I'm really impressed with Zion's playmaking the last week or so. And just since they moved him to the point guard position without BI on the floor, they've been playing really good ball and they just grind you out. They're tough to score against. So I really like the Pelicans. And overall, the last couple games is proof in the pudding that if the Milwaukee Bucks don't get B+ games at least from Chris Middleton on offense specifically, they don't have enough. When we're talking about playing the upper echelon teams in the NBA, Chris Middleton the last 2 games, 7 for 27 from the floor. That's not going to get it done. And especially with where their backcourt defense is with him and Dame Lillard, they're going to have a hard time guarding a lot of people as well. So if he's going to struggle offensively, Milwaukee is going to have a hard time. So I'm very impressed with the Pelicans and just what they do night in, night out. I think along with Denver, along with the Knicks and a couple other squads, the Thunder, the Pelicans have a clear identity and clear roles for each and every player on the floor. And you can't say that for even to date right now, as we're essentially done with the regular season. You can't say that for a lot of these teams that are going to be in the playoffs here in the NBA.
All right, so Orlando, my big thing is, I'll just say this. I need to see what the young guys look like in the playoff environment because, like the Cavs last year, that was a really good team. And then they got in the playoffs and the lights were bright. Are the lights going to be bright for Paolo and Franz? Like, is that going to be bright for them? Is Jamal Mosley ready for that to make the kind of playoff adjustments?
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't know. I'm not saying they're not. I just don't know. Like, they are an unknown. And I am of the opinion you do need to see what these guys look like in a postseason environment because 16 game is so different than 82. It's so different.
100%. I think that the tough thing where we have to play the middle ground is as bettors when looking at the market is you just got to decide if you're going to take a stand and pick the year that the Miami Heat aren't going to just obliterate everyone on the way to the playoffs, right?
I mean, look.
So I think that's like the key because we're going to get some very interesting prices on the Miami Heat, on the Phoenix Suns. There's going to be some series here where we're looking at prices where it's like, man, is this really the number for this matchup? Because, like, for example, I would love to see like the Knicks Heat. I would love to see that number. There's going to be so many people trying to back the Heat in that spot. I would love to see a number for that series and seeing where the money's going via the public.
Let's just say you're falling. I think you're falling in the trap, Miami.
I could be.
I get it. I will say this: the local media in Miami is pretty concerned, like that, because it's really hard to just be like none of this matters,
right?
That you'll just be an entirely different and better team. I do think for me it's entirely that matchup. I don't want Miami if they're against the Knicks. I don't want Miami if they're versus the Celtics. Well, that's different. They have voodoo there. The one that I really want is I want 2-7 Bucks Heat. Because the market has to, the big key there is if it's Bucks Heat, that has to be a -2.5 win line for the Bucks. It has to be.
Right.
You have the 2 seed with Giannis and Dame, 50+ wins versus a team that's barely over 500 with like a +0.7 point differential. They have to. And I will take the +2.5 wins, just like I did last year. Like, yes, we'll be on it. With the Pelicans, it's really, I'm really interested in where they wind up seated, right? So if they wind up in this 4-5, and again, in the playoff picture you can find on actionnetwork.com and the Action Network app, it can be Wolves, it can be Nuggets, it can be Thunder. I'll say, look, I don't hate the Pels matchup with Denver. I don't love it because Denver's better and Denver should beat everybody in the West. I don't hate that because the Pels bring size and shooting, and those are 2 things that you need. They can hound Jamal Murray with Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. They got Jose Alvarado to be a pest. They have a deeper bench. They have Zion to bring size. They have Jonas Valanciunas to basically be sacrificed at the altar of Joker. Like they have the guys. Now, I think Willie Green is going too much to the small ball stuff, and he's going to need to cut that out because that was a big problem on our bet stream this week, which you could have found on the NBA app for Pels Thunder. is he like got sucked into like, oh, well, the Thunder were so fast. We needed to go small to keep up with them. I'm like, no, man. Play JV and Zion and beat the snot out of them. That's what they don't want to do. Like,
Yep.
they want you in a track meet with them. So like coaching, I think, is a question mark. But look, Wolves Thunder. If it's Wolves in 1 and Pels are in 5, I'm interested. If it's Thunder in 1, Pels in 5, I want to be. But that last game, I'm gonna have to really go back and see the rest of the matchups this year to kind of get a feel for it. But I think it's pretty interesting. Before we do best bets, I want to hit on the Knicks because I think it's important to kind of to touch on the Knicks and where they're at. Um, the Knicks, as of last night, moved out of the 4-5 spot there in the 3, and as a result, they are now out of the Celtics bracket for now. Now they can fall back into that very easily. Not a big deal. Bucks also lost tonight, which that puts the Knicks just 1 game back of the 2 seed, which that's how they could play Miami. There's a path here. There is a path that looks something like Knicks in 2 versus a 7 seed Indiana Pacers team with Tyrese Halliburton not 100%, and then facing a potentially like the winner of Bucks Heat. And that looks very good. Like, I went ahead and put a ticket in on the Knicks last night because I needed to see them get out of the Celtics bracket. It's basically like I may just start betting like Knicks when they're out of the Celtics bracket and the Celtics when the Knicks are in the Celtics bracket. The Sixers being kind of the outlier here. They're the team I think that is really dangerous in the Eastern Conference. Mitchell Robinson came back. That was a big thing for me. If you listen to the podcast, you know that's a huge thing for me. Their playoff formula is this. Jalen Brunson is just a bad motherfucker when playoff time comes, and he is built for it, and he will torch a lot of the drop coverage and pick and roll that you're going to see from these teams in the playoffs, especially the Milwaukee Bucks. I love that matchup for New York. OG Anunoby's elbow, it looks like it's got grapefruit on it right now. That's concerning, but if they can get the sweat, if it's just inflammation, if they can get the swelling down next 3 weeks, should be good to go. Randall doesn't seem like it's like close, but I do think like they're at least talking about him. He's working out. I think it's probable that we're going to see Julius Randle again by the end of the season. To me, this Knicks team has the best value right now before Joel Embiid gets back. Like, I have to see the report. Joel Embiid is coming back on Friday before I fire on Sixers futures any more than I've already done. But I do like. I get that we've talked about this all year. The Celtics, their entire profile is they should roll through the Eastern Conference. But on the other side of the bracket, giving me a big position to hedge against in a conference finals matchup, I love this Knicks team.
Yeah, you know where I'm at. I'm a big fan of the Knicks and what they've been doing. Yeah, you laid it out pretty well, especially about Jalen Brunson. I will say this. This is no inside information, none of that. I'm starting to get a touch worried about Julius Randle and his status. No full contact yet. We're starting to run out of games, Matt. If you saw Mitchell Robinson come back last night, he needs to get in shape. He's the guy he was dealing with a lower body. He was dealing with an ankle, right? Julius is still in great shape because he was dealing with an upper body. He could still run around, but he still hasn't banged around. And that right shoulder, I know it's not his shooting shoulder, but that's his ram shoulder. That's where he's lowering and banging into people. That's how he plays ball. So I'm starting to get a little worried that Julius isn't going to have enough time to get back. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he's back in the next 3 to 4 games. That would be amazing. And you saw how quick it happened with Mitchell Robinson. The Knicks are pretty hush-hush about what's going on with injuries and who's going to play and when they're not going to play. Mitchell Robinson he'll be back soon, to questionable, to active, to he'll play. And pretty quickly in that cadence. So I'm starting to get a little worried about just Julius having enough time to get back and roll in and get the mental piece solidified where I feel comfortable ramming into people with this banged up shoulder. I think that's the biggest thing. So hopefully he can get back soon. But I think I agree, Nick, or excuse me, I agree, Matt. I think it's imperative that they stay in that 3. I love that road in the 3 seed rather than the 4. If you've been watching Knicks hoops, you know they've had trouble with Orlando. I'd much rather have those guys play the 6, whether that's the Pacers or could even be Miami. But I do like the way they sit and feel in that 3 seed. We know we talk voodoo. The Knicks have the voodoo against the Cavs, that's for sure. But the road is a lot easier on that 3 slot. I think that's why they've been playing the way they've been playing. They're trying to lock up that 3 and make sure they can close the year and finish on that opposite side of the bracket of the Boston Celtics. But yes, I love what the Knicks have been doing. And if you're close to the Knicks like me, OG, when he came back in the middle of he came back for a game and then went right back out for the next 4 or 5. It was known he wasn't gonna be a part of the offensive strategy that game he came back. And he was still very impactful without looking to shoot or being a part of any shooting in the entire game. He still affected the game quite a bit on D, just being his long defense himself. So hopefully that swelling will go down. And even if it's not 100% and he's not a part of that offensive plan, that corner 3 that he's been very impactful with, he could still be a big factor on the defensive side of the rock.
Yeah. Friday's a huge day in the NBA. This is a huge night in the association. So on the slate for Friday are a number of games. We'll talk about them in the best bet segment coming up. We do have bets on some of those games and we'll talk about them. Among those, but I do want to set the table for everybody going into Friday's matchups. So you have to start. It's all of the Western Conference is where the big stuff is. Minnesota plays Denver. That's number 1 versus number 2 in the Western Conference currently. This is the way that this goes down. If the Wolves win, they simultaneously, 2 things happen. They win tiebreaker over both Denver and OKC. So the Wolves can clinch tiebreaker because even if the Nuggets win the final game, they split. The Wolves would have a better division record than Denver. So they clinch tiebreaker over Denver in that spot. They also clinch tiebreaker over the Thunder because they would finish with a better division record than OKC. This is the biggest game of the season for the Minnesota Timberwolves. All their guys are questionable, predictably, because this is March in the NBA. But it is an absolutely massive game. Nuggets coming off of a home loss to the Suns, played badly. Jamal Murray is still questionable for tomorrow night's game. He did go through all of his pregame warm up in versus the Suns. He went through his usual warm up. He's wearing a sleeve on the knee, a little bit of not a brace, just like a sleeve on the knee. Inflammation in the left knee. That's where he had the ACL, but it acted up on him. They're being cautious. I'm a little bit surprised that not more guys are on this injury list for Denver because they are banged up. They are tired now because they pushed pretty hard out of the All-Star break. Aaron Gordon in particular needs a breather. He's pretty banged up. Reggie Jackson, banged up, needs a breather. They need to get to a spot where seeding is determined so they can kind of rest. Minnesota, on the other hand, obviously no Towns. Rudy is questionable, as is Ant. So, we'll talk about in best bets the whole bunch of stuff you got to figure out before you bet this game. Elsewhere, the other big game, Dallas Mavericks take on the Sacramento Kings. Kings can win tiebreaker if they win this game. They got smacked by the Dallas Mavericks earlier this week. They were both on a back-to-back. Both teams were on a back-to-back, so it was a bad rest spot for both teams. Kings were in a 5-7. They looked it. I'm very curious to see what happens in this contest, but that one is an absolutely huge game. Some of the other ones that are notable, the Lakers are going to play the Pacers. Pacers trying to keep that 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. Golden State on this East Coast road trip, got past, had the whole Draymond incident, got snuck out of that one with a win versus the Magic. They're playing Charlotte. You think that you got to imagine they're going to win. Big favorites, 12-point favorites there. Philly and Cleveland, another big matchup as the Sixers, they hung with the Clippers in that second game. They're battling to stay out of the 8th seed, make sure that they're not going to fall any further than 8. But look, it's getting out of the playoffs is very possible for the Sixers, especially with Embiid practicing. It's going to be a very big day in the association. We're going to do best bets. We'll hit up yours as well as some of the ones we got in the chat comment section. We'll do that here as we get to the second part of our show here on Live Buckets. Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Sean Little, a.k.a. Chicago Flow. He's from MSG Networks. We've been breaking it down here on Live Buckets, which you can catch every Monday and Thursday live on YouTube at youtube.com/the Action Network at 11 Eastern, breaking down everything in the association. You can find this show on YouTube if you want to catch that segment. If you're listening to this on the podcast, we talked about the Celtics once again having a late game destruction at the hands of the Atlanta Hawks. We talked about the New Orleans Pelicans being red hot. Sean gave some fire takes about the Orlando Magic and Miami Heat. We covered all the big games for Friday. Make sure to check that out. Buckets is presented by North Carolina's newest sportsbook, BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5 for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or over. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get some best bets for the Friday slate, Sean. This is one of the biggest nights in the association this year. We got big games on the docket. What's your best bets for Friday?
Yeah, I got two. I'm going to go Pacers first half -1.5, and then Kings money line -120 versus the Mavs.
Okay. I'm on Sixers +8 versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. And we'll talk about it. I am tentatively, depending on injury report, got to see what the injury report looks like. There'll be a pregame bet +6.5 Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Denver Nuggets. All right, Sean, let's start with the Pacers bet because I'm curious about this one.
Yeah.
With the Lakers, I'm pretty high on them right now. I actually think that they're maybe a little bit underrated in the market here. Obviously, the injury report is significant with the Lakers, who seem to be trying to like get guys healthy for the playoffs that they may not be in, which is a choice. Anthony Davis is questionable. LeBron James is questionable. Gabe Vincent's still out. He's getting closer to a return, but still going to be out in this one. Injury report's pretty clear for the Indiana Pacers outside of Bennedict Mathurin, who's out for the rest of the season. Especially, I'm curious in the first half play. Why do you like the Pacers in the first half on this one?
Yeah, this is barring the injury report is obviously massive here in this spot. We know Anthony Davis is coming off of a miss. He's questionable. And that's a big part of this cap. If Anthony Davis is on the floor, I would rethink this entire play. So we'll see what happens there. But with Anthony Davis off the floor, that's who kills the Indiana Pacers inside and guys like Anthony Davis. If you have a dominant big that can impact on both ends like Anthony Davis can, it's a big problem for the Indiana Pacers and Miles Turner. So if you can avoid Anthony Davis in this spot and potentially get LeBron James to go, I like this spot in the first half for the Pacers. Now, this is a little bit of a sell high in the window on the Los Angeles Lakers. They're going to be feeling extremely good coming off of the big wins and the streak that they're on that side, and just kind of looking like the team we expected them to be coming in here and closing out their year. But without Anthony Davis on the floor, I like the Pacers in the first half because overall, especially when LeBron comes back, typically off of a missed game, he usually starts a little bit slow. In the first half this year, he's averaging seven and change from the floor field goal attempts. And in the second half, it balloons all the way up to like 9.7. So he usually gets going later on in the game. And I like the Pacers to bounce back here and continue to put together a better overall performance at home than they have been recently. Tyrese Halliburton's got to wake up, and this is not the worst matchup to do so against guys like D'Lo and Austin Reeves. So this is contingent on Anthony Davis if he doesn't go, and I feel like one of those guys is going to miss, right? I saw it before we hopped on. It was 2.5. The Pacers were favored. Now it's 3. There's some, I just saw a 3.5 flash on the board as well. So I like the -1.5 for the Pacers in the first half. Take it up to 2. I would probably start to pump the brakes after a -2 if Anthony Davis doesn't go. But I'm gonna sell on a fat, feeling good Lakers team here on a little hungrier squad without one of their biggest guys in Anthony Davis if he doesn't go. I kind of expect Ant not to go and LeBron to go, but we'll see. That's speculation, just gut. But if that is the case, I do like the Pacers in the first half.
Line's interesting. So what do we think this goes to if both Davis and LeBron play? Pick them?
Yeah, it's probably a pick 'em. Maybe even a 1.5 for the
Because
Lakers -1.5.
for those of you that are new to the show, it's not that LeBron and AD are together only worth 3 points of the spread. Is that this number is very clearly reflecting
It's a little half and half, a little
It's a
middle.
halfway,
Yeah.
right? It's like, okay, we don't know if they're going to play or not. Let's put it in the middle and let's see which way the market takes it. So the market's obviously like, hey, like Davis Mays is probably not going to play in this one. Let's go ahead and take Indiana. But if he plays, that comes back all the way, and it probably moves to 3. Might even move the Lakers -1. I will say, I make this full strength Lakers -2.5. So if I get in, if it's announced AD and LeBron are a go, I'll try and grab that as soon as possible. We'll see what the number bumps to. If it gets over 2.5, I won't play it, but I will play it at 2 or under on the Lakers if AD and LeBron are a go. Our guy in the comment section, Colin earlier brought up Philly +7.5 at Cleveland. It's now 8. Yeah, I'm gonna take the Sixers here. So, I've downgraded obviously the Sixers for being without Embiid, but they've gotten a little bit better. They've actually started to, it's not just versus the Clippers. The 76ers have actually started to be able to cover some of these games. I feel like they are settling in and getting a little bit better in terms of being able to handle without him. Now, you look at that and you go like, Matt, they've lost 4 of 5. They have, you're absolutely right, but they have covered 5 of 7. And that's what I'm really counting on here. This is the Cavs team that Donovan Mitchell's still questionable. Donovan can play. The Cavs have a hard time beating guys by margin. They're not very good in these kind of spots, laying big numbers and having blowout wins. That's not really how they're wired. So with the Sixers, with Tyrese Maxey kind of playing a little bit better, to me, I watch the Sixers and I kind of get the sense that there's a feeling of I think Embiid coming back to the practice legitimately gave them a boost, and they've actually kind of talked about this. Like they've talked about, well, we got the big fella, and I think that that's reinvigorated them because I think for a while they were honestly playing with like, man, I don't know, like the season might just be lost. They've played with a lot more verve lately, and they're hanging within these numbers, and that's why they've covered 5 of 7. So at a number above 2 possessions for the Cavaliers, who continue to be really messy and inconsistent, I'll go ahead and I'll grab the number here with the Cleveland Cavaliers or with the Philadelphia 76ers versus the Cavs. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I think that is the way to go. I was actually leaning that way when I was going through the sheet and trying to figure out my best bet for the evening. The Cavs have been inconsistent, and Maxey is just kind of keeping these dudes afloat a little bit. And I agree 100%. Even the report of the big fella being around and potentially starting to get going, it feels it's a hope thing. It's like maybe we do have something to actually play for, and maybe we'll actually be able to compete a little bit here in the playoffs if we do get the big fella back. So I think that is a big factor here. The number feel the 7.5 to 8 feels a little too heavy. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I need to dig in a little more. I'm kind of confused on why it's that big of a number. But yeah, I think it would be Philly or nothing for me, especially when we're talking about March and what we're doing here. Now, the one factor is this is the first time the Cavs have not been the 3 in quite a while,
Yep.
right? This is the first time they're kind of like, well, fuck. Knicks are not playing around and they're not slowing up. So
Yeah.
they could come in here with a little extra motivation of trying to get that 3 seed back. That's a factor in this game, but 8 points in this matchup does feel heavy.
Cavs this season, when they're favored by more than 6 points, so more than 2 possessions at home, 3-7 ATS. They win the games, they're 7-3, but they're just 3-7 against the spread. All right, I'm fascinated to get into this one because
Yeah.
you are taking the Sacramento Kings in a duplex spot. I have a lot of thoughts on this game, but I want to hear your cap for why you're
Yeah.
taking the Kings on the money line versus Luka and the Mavs.
Yeah, the duplex spot is fun, and that's a part of this cap. If you've looked around the league, you could look at the Boston Celtics. That second game, regardless if it's in the opponent's building, you're on the road for that duplex stop. It is a tough spot to get 2 W's in a row. And I think that first game, they shot like 35% from the floor. The Kings were horrific. Everybody was bad from the floor. Malik Monk had his second game in a row where he was pitiful from the floor. DeMontis was bad from the floor. Everybody across the board, they had a really poor shooting night from the field and from 3. It's kind of just a throwaway game. And if you look at the other 2 games that they played against each other, and they were both in Dallas, the Kings looked really, really good and beat both of those, and got W's in both of those games, scoring 120 plus in both. I started to lean towards the team total here, but with the unders and that trend and how competitive and locked in they're going to be on this game, I kind of shied away from that. I'm going to go with a team that can really solidify some positioning here, coming off a blowout loss at home. That's why I'm leaning Kings here. And an overall slate where the reason I went with this game on the slate was as you mentioned, it's probably the most important regular season day of the season so far to date. We know the Suns are kicking off the death march here with these next 9 or 10 games in with the Thunder. So it was either big numbers or really tight games and small numbers. I just think the Kings here feels I don't want to call it I despise calling things must win, but this is a really big spot at home and you get you get the advantage and the favor of being in Sacramento and coming off a blowout loss. Both teams coming off 2 full days of rest now. I lean Sacramento in this spot.
Have you ever heard my Game 7 story
I haven't.
about must win? So it's 2013, and the Heat and Spurs are playing what I consider to be the best finals ever played. And it's shoot around, media availability. I'm sorry, the day before.
Yeah.
Game 7. Okay, last game of the season. Epic series. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard, Manu Ginobili. I went to as many players as possible and I asked them this question: Is Game 7 a must win? And the answers were amazing. My favorite being that David Aldridge, when we're waiting for Pop to talk, is like, some idiot was asking everybody if Game 7 was a must win. And like, I didn't know David then. I met David
Yeah.
like later. We got lunch, and now like I love David. He's great. He's a legend, Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was just like, oh God, like trying to hide from David Aldridge
Yeah.
for saying that. My favorite was Chris Bosh, who like stopped and was like,
I'm sure the delivery was
yeah,
tongue in cheek though. It was delivered
it was
correctly.
amazing. It was amazing though. Chris Bosh was like, yes, of course. It's the last game. What are you talking about? So anyway, yeah, so okay, so let's go through some of the numbers here on the duplex spot.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of trends here I have for Kings, and I'll tell you why I can't bet it, unfortunately. All right, so you play a team twice. You played them at home. You, as a favorite, you lost, and now you're a favorite again. Those teams all time, and these are all games since 2021 when they started the duplex series.
Yep.
41 and 16 straight
Lights
up,
out.
72%.
Yep. Lights out.
34, 22, and 1 ATS at 61%. They kill in the
Yeah.
spot. So like it I think a lot of it just has to do with beating a team twice is hard. Beating a team twice in one building is really hard. And most of the time, even if you are a big, especially if that team is better than you and so favorited. Now that's the question mark here, is whether the Kings are better. But I do think that's like a really strong trend. I have some others to help you make you feel better, Sean. The Mavericks made a absolute just metric ton of threes in that last game. They absolutely lit them up. They made more than 20 threes in that last game. Since 2013, when a team makes 20 threes in the following game, they are 37 and 106 for just 25% straight up, and they are just 39% ATS. Opponents of those teams are 87, 55, and 1 at 61% against the spread, facing a team that made 20 plus threes in the previous game. How about this? The Kings this season have been one of the best squads after a loss. They are 19 and 10 straight up after a loss, 18 and 11, 62% ATS coming off of a loss. So all of the trends are here. I think that everyone, like, that game the other night was one of those where it's like the Mavericks fans were just like losing their mind, like, yeah, like we're coming, like, yeah. And I'm like, guys, if you lose on Friday, you still lose tiebreaker. And
Yeah.
like, again, both teams were in a bad rest spot. The Kings were in a worse one. And now you got to face them on normal rest in the same building with them pissed off. So
On a Friday night.
on a Friday night
All that
at the
stuff, all
Beam.
that stuff matters. Yeah, man. I mean, they knocked there. They had 22 threes. The
Yep.
Dallas Mavericks were on fire. It was one of those games. They were up early, like 35. And it was like, yeah, this is done. Throw this one out. Sacramento couldn't hit anything. And Dallas was hitting everything. And it was almost like, yeah, we'll see you fucking guys on Friday. So, yeah, I think this is, if with the duplex spot and how well Sacramento comes off a loss and just the matchup being favored again, it's It's interesting too, Matt, because in a spot like this, I feel like the Kings ball this up and throw it away, but Dallas kind of feels good about it. Like I told you, we were like, man, we're the better team. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
just saw it. We just showed up here and blew their doors off. Like, what do you got? Yeah, we'll show up Friday and everything will be just as good. But if they don't shoot it at a 56% clip from three, it might get a little different. So yeah, I like the Kings here.
My look, every lean in me is like Kings. Like I think like King alt lines. Like that's what I want right here.
Yeah.
I,
You
I
seeing Luca's face when you close your eyes?
here's my problem.
Kyrie's face when he's
Not no, it's not even that. It's not even that. It's really not because I think the Kings are probably a little underrated. The fucking model. And I don't. So here's the thing. I have kind of been like, look, I'm not going to rely on the model as much in the back half of the season. Definitely not in March. I want to play trends and I want to play spot plays,
Right.
right? The problem is when I've done that and I faded the model, like the model's been right. And I always say that the best thing about having a model is not that it finds you plays that you want to take, it finds you spots that you should stay away from.
Yeah, your moral
And
compass.
yeah, and my numbers are still like, no, this should be Mavericks -2 on full rest. Like this should be Mavericks are a better team. A lot of that's because like the Kings don't pop really well in my numbers. They haven't for 2 seasons. I think it's not entirely wrong based off of team strength. Um, but I do think this is gonna be a hell of a game. I do lean heavy. I am absolutely endorsing Sean's pick. I wish I could bet it. I can't get there because of the model number. But I do. If nothing else, my play like I think the money line's a great play here at -120. Don't screw around with spread. Just take them to win this game. And this is the biggest game of the Kings season. Um, Speaking of biggest games of the season, we got Nuggets and Wolves. So Nuggets off of a loss. Never a good time to fade the Denver Nuggets, who are absolutely phenomenal when they are off of a loss. They're at home. You never want to bet against them at home. They've been so good at home throughout the last 2 seasons, especially when they have Joker. Um, the number 6.5. This is entirely based off of I got to see what the injury report looks like pregame. So this is not I'm not playing anything before we get to tip off essentially because it's probably going to be game time decision for some of these guys. Jamal Murray, I talked about this on the our live show. I'll say it again for the podcast. Jamal Murray went through his entire warm up. He went through on Wednesday versus the Suns. So he went through his entire warm up. He's got a sleeve on the knee. I would not be surprised if he played this game, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he missed it because they are having to be extremely cautious. The Nuggets all said that their number one priority is they got to get healthy. And here's a big number for you. The Denver Nuggets are 6-8 straight up when any of their starters are out. 6-8 straight up
Wow.
when any of their starters are out. They
Wow.
have to have the starting five. Now, that's versus teams over 500. So I want to be
Okay.
clear. I think that's an important stipulation here.
Yes.
Is they're fine. They can beat the Grizzlies and the Blazers and the Wizards and all those teams when the guys are out. To beat the good teams, they got to have the five because it's how those five play together. Rudy Gobert is questionable. Towns is obviously out. Ant's actually questionable with this one as well. If Ant's out, not playing it. If Gobert's out, I'm not playing it. If Ant and Gobert are good to go and they play in this game, I will take the Minnesota Timberwolves. They match up well with Denver. Denver has said this before that they have talked about. Um, and it's really been like an entire thing for them that I think is really I think it's important for us to mention that the Nuggets consistently say the Wolves are the toughest matchup for them. I like the matchup. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, if Jamal plays, Nickeil Alexander-Walker gives Jamal Murray a tough time. Jaden McDaniel gives Jamal Murray a tough time. They have the size, which Aaron Gordon is a little beat up already. Having to go against Gobert down low in stagger minutes, which is that's how Denver's like, that's their not cheat code, but when they're very serious, they play AG at 5. I don't think they're going to do that in this game, which means it's going to be Zeke Naji, or if he's back, which he's still out with an injury, or DeAndre Jordan. Or they had to go to Peyton Watson the other night at 5.
Yeah.
No, no. So
Yeah.
I need the injury clean, but I do think that there is I will say, I will not just take the 6.5. I'll probably play money line too. I think there's a very good chance the Minnesota Timberwolves actually beat the Denver Nuggets in Denver for 2 straight losses at home. For this bit to be, they will have lost to the Mavericks, the Suns, and the Wolves at home here late in the season. That doesn't mean I don't think the Nuggets are going to win the title, but I do think that the Wolves are live tomorrow night versus the Nuggets.
Let me ask you this: how important is the one to Denver? From you being around the squad and asking around, how important is that one seed? It seems like it's kind of important. They
I
want
think
it. It seems like to me.
I think it was really important until Wednesday. Uh, and the reason I say that is I think they genuinely thought that they could get rest, get healthy, and win it.
Right.
Because they rested two starters. They rested Jamal and Nikola versus the Blazers. And then they rested Aaron and Jamal. Jamal's genuinely hurt. He's having injury issues. But Jamal was out, Aaron was out on Monday. And so like they're trying to basically do both, and you can't. Like this is the thing that you do have to choose. You can push and get the one seed, but that means you don't get the rest you want.
Right.
Or you can back off. You can back off and you can get your guys. You can be like, look, you know, we're gonna give AG 5 days off. We're gonna give Joker 3 days. Like Joker's fine because he's a tank, but we're gonna give KCP 3 days off. You can do that, but it lowers your win percentage. They have some games they can probably still, they might be able to still win, right? Like because they beat the Blazers and they beat the Grizzlies when they were missing guys. It's not like they'll beat like San Antonio. They play I think twice. They won't automatically beat San Antonio if they're resting guys. They just it lowers the percentage chance. Like
Yeah, no
they might
question.
get caught. I do think though that there was a shift the other night from their comments about we'd love to get the one seed, but we got to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's gonna guide them. I think part of them really thought that a 12 and that a 15-2 run post All Star would have put these teams in the rear view,
Right.
and it didn't. That OKC, even though they slid a little bit, is right there, and the Wolves without Towns are just not fucking going away.
No doubt.
And that to me, I think is part of the guiding principle here.
What's something interesting is, as you just heard, everybody listening, watching, that Matt laid out, depending on the injury report, he likes Minnesota in that spot, potentially on the money line. Well, right now you can get there's a number in the market for Minnesota Timberwolves to get the one seed in the West at plus 400. The
Yeah,
Denver Nuggets are minus 245.
yeah, they're
If
overvalued.
if the Timberwolves get that win tomorrow night, that number will change significantly. Just something to keep in mind if you're looking at future markets and potentially tying something up for tomorrow night.
All right, so that's our best bets. Sean likes Pacers first half and Kings money line minus 120. I'm on Sixers plus 8 and the Minnesota Timberwolves pending injuries at plus 6.5. Some bets from the chat segment tonight here on Buckets Live, which again we're Mondays and Thursdays, 11 Eastern. Bulls -5 cover versus Nets. David Martell asked us. So David, what I would tell you is the Nets are actually really good when they're at home against the spread as a home dog versus teams under 500. That's the one spot that Brooklyn does pretty well this season. If they're versus actually, good teams, they lose and they don't cover. The Bulls are I'll ask you, Sean, are the Bulls a good team?
Oh, the Bulls are a good team. No, Bulls are a bad team, bad franchise. No.
Okay. All right, like, well, here's the thing: is like they're not terrible. Like they're going to be in the play-in. They're going to be
Yeah.
live in probably the like. I think they beat the Hawks, and I think they're going to be live in that game for the 8th seed.
Yep.
But also, they're not consistent, and like so my thing is, I lean Nets. I don't want to bet them because I've seen a lot of quit from Brooklyn over the
Yeah.
last 3 weeks. It is 1-2-3 Cancun time up in Brooklyn,
Big
but
time Cancun vibes from
yeah,
the Brooklyn Nets.
big
No,
time.
any type of resistance, anytime anything gets a little difficult, they're like, yeah, nah, not interested in this.
Yeah. Last one, or Trayvon Williams asked Magic plus 1.5. Sean had big thoughts on the Magic in our live show. Orlando tomorrow night taking on the LA Clippers. They
Yeah.
are home dogs here. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, man. I put my, Matt knows, and maybe those who aren't in the media business, just on a day in, day out talking NBA, you get in spots where you kind of have to take a stand and pick some teams that you like throughout the rest of the year. And I puffed my chest out for the Los Angeles Clippers in a major way. I puffed my chest out for the Dallas Mavericks, which I still feel good about. But I the 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 middle part of the season that the Clippers, excuse me, put together, I was very confident that they would, at one point could really deal with the Denver Nuggets if it got to a 7-game series. I no longer feel that way. And they are just laboring, man. James Harden is laboring coming down the stretch. Offensively, they have a really hard time putting the ball in the basket outside of Paul George scoring 25 and Kawhi Leonard scoring 25. Other than that, they have a really hard time just scoring baskets. And now you have to go on the road on a Friday night, as we mentioned, against the Orlando Magic, who have tons of bodies in both the front court and back court, have length, and that can give you issues. If I had to pick a side on that, I'm going with the Orlando Magic at home. They have a lot of guys, dude. Jonathan Isaac has been awesome when he's on the floor for them. They're a real, I'm big, I'm high on the Orlando Magic. I love what they're doing. They don't seem to care. They just try to rough you up. They're rough and tumble, and then they'll let Paolo score 27, 28, and then Franz be the trigger man, and then get buckets and then get 10 from Mo Wagner, 10 from Wendell Carter, 11 from Jalen Suggs, 12 from Cole Anthony. And next thing you know, you're going possession by possession, and they're not tired because they're playing 13 dudes. So, yeah, I think it's a tough matchup for the Los Angeles Clippers. I lean Orlando Magic.
So I looked this up while you were talking. The Magic this season, after a loss, 18-11 ATS at 62%.
Yeah. If you
So
go through the entire sheet, ATS numbers on the Orlando Magic and the New
yeah,
Orleans
it's good.
Pelicans, it's just money would be falling out of our ass, Matt. If that's the only if the 3 teams we bet all year were the Orlando Magic, the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, we would be in phenomenal shape.
So
There's not a bad ATS number on the Magic or the Pelicans.
I'm gonna go ahead and add this. I'm adding Magic +1.5 to best bets.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna add it just because they're really good in this spot. And this is disrespectful to them. Look, I've got it with normalized home court. I make this Magic +2, but the Magic have been absolutely dynamite this season. So with adjusted home court, I've got this Magic -3. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that when hashtag wrong team favored. Before we get out of here, real quickly, Anna and Mark says, "Hi guys, do you really think Kobe and Nas have a chance to win Most Improved in 6-man?" Most Improved, I don't. I still think it's gonna be Maxey. I think Embiid comes back. Maxey has a big game. They wind up getting out of the play-in tournament and into the playoffs, and everyone goes like, "No, Maxey's been better this year." I think Kobe's gonna get votes, but I think that Maxey wins it on first and second place votes, and so I think Maxey does take home Most Improved. Nas, I think, is live for 6-man. Malik's a huge favorite. Malik Monk is a huge favorite in this market right now. I do think that there's going to be a significant push for like the Wolves. Like Nas has been awesome this year. There's a good piece on him today. There
awesome.
was some tweets that were going around. Like I think Nas is live for 6-man. It's a good number. It's a good value number, but it's not worth a big position because I do think Malik should be the favorite.
Yeah, Cat went down. Nas has stepped up in a phenomenal way, and they haven't missed a beat on the straight up side of things. So yeah, Nas Reed has really solidified how important he is for the Minnesota Timberwolves with Cat going down, and he's been good for a while now, and I'm glad he's starting to get some respect. I know he got the new deal, which a lot of people thought was an overpay, but Nas Reed has been playing really good ball. So yeah, I'm happy for him, and seeing him step up when they need him has been fun because I really want to see Minnesota go toe to toe with some teams here in the Western Conference. Yeah, Malik Monk on the 6-man side he fit the bill preseason. We talked about it. He's still there. I think he just has too big of a lead. But yeah, we'll see how that shakes. But yes, Tyrese Maxey has also had Most Improved locked up the entire season. He's awesome. I love Tyrese Maxey as well.
All right, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us, especially folks hanging out with us in the chat on Buckets Live. Folks like Anna and Mark and Trayvon gave us that great Magic +1.5. David Martell, so many folks hanging out with us in the chat segment. Appreciate you guys being with us tonight. This is, I think, our best live bucket, so we've really enjoyed it. I hope you guys can join us again on Monday at 11 Eastern for another edition of Live Buckets. We'll be back on Monday morning with the future Jays as we head into the last, I can't believe it. We're heading into the last 2 weeks of the regular season. April's here. It's NBA time. We'll start breaking down playoff matchups, seedings, play-in, all sorts of stuff. Appreciate you guys being with us. My thanks so much to Tito, our producer, who has been so phenomenal making this show go. Really appreciate him. And David Payne, our audio producer, getting this up on podcasts. As the video side, Hutton Jackson and the crew for getting this up on youtube.com/The Action Network. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll see you guys again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Till then, get buckets.